Hello everyone, welcome to the sixth of 6 sessions on qualitative data analysis. This video is about presenting qualitative findings. In this session, we will look at ways of presenting findings from qualitative analysis and try to understand, making sense of data and constructing a narrative, issues of representation and reflexivity, the write-up process with an overview of the general common points for all types of writing and differences based on the writing format and style, considerations on practical applications of qualitative results, for example, to inform practices in existing projects, to develop new projects, to inform policies, and more CRFS-specific applications, and examples from FRN stories. In the previous sessions, we saw how, through the process of coding and conducting thematic analysis, we can determine the main themes and categories in the data together with their relationships. The results of this analytical process usually lead us to developing a structure that helps us explain the interpretation of the data collected. Once we have defined the structure that helps us respond our research questions, we need to decide what are the main messages that we want to communicate and how. The how refers to whether the narrative that we develop will be communicated in the form of a presentation, a written report, a scientific article, or maybe a video, depending on the audience we want to communicate it to. When we construct a narrative to present our research results, as well as during the whole research process, we need to pay attention to issues of representation and reflexivity. When we consider representing the views and meanings of the research participants as others, we provide accounts of their perspectives and experiences through our own interpretation. Therefore, we need to be cautious in asserting that we are giving them a voice. Rather, we should provide an accurate account of how we have arrived at the interpretations of the participants' words. Doing this would be a more transparent way of presenting our results. It can be useful to ask the questions: whose voice is being represented? Are we doing justice to the participants? These questions can help us present our results more accurately. For instance, if we look at the example interview between Schiffer and Rick that we used in the previous sessions, if I present research results that talk about the unequal power relationship between them and its negative implications for Schiffer, it is important to frame a message in a way that clearly explains that those are my interpretations of what happens in their interaction. I should not say that my interpretation represents Schiffer's views. Similarly, the process of reflexivity and positionality are crucial in qualitative analysis. Reflexivity refers to the process of self-reflection and questioning of one's own ideas, beliefs, and views throughout the research process, from the design to data collection, analysis, and dissemination, as it helps us be aware of our role and to shape the research and its results. For instance, we can be aware of different cultural backgrounds between us and the participants and of how those differences may influence how they perceive us and vice versa. A practical example from my experience is how, as a white European researcher, the research participants in the Jamaican community where I did my ethnographic fieldwork perceived me as a result of that. For example, they often thought that I was richer and more knowledgeable than them, and that impacted the way they related to me. In the same way, Positionality refers to the process of being aware of and making explicit where we stand with respect to various aspects of the research topics and what has shaped us into how we are and where we stand. Awareness about all these dimensions and making this information explicit is part of ensuring a transparent research process. Some useful questions to think about these aspects are: where do you, that is to say the researcher, and your voice stand? An example can be again from my ethnographic fieldwork in Jamaica. Based on my upbringing and education, for instance, I was at first very hurt by seeing how parents and teachers still punished pupils by hitting them with a belt and thought that it was unacceptable, together with critically thinking about the influence of the colonial past and the symbolic meanings of those practices. By living with the community for an extended period of time, and after learning how they interpreted the practice, I realized that we held very different perspectives on it. Therefore, when writing my results, I had to acknowledge where I positioned myself on this and other aspects of understanding reality and how this positioning influenced my data interpretation. Ideally, the write-up process is not the last step of analysis, but it already started at earlier stages. We write when we take notes from observations or when we transcribe interviews into text, and then when we start preparing summaries of the themes and categories identified. Those initial pieces of writing are essential to later arrive at the final written narrative. But how do we build that final written document? Firstly, we need to decide what type of text we are going to write. Is it an internal report, a scientific publication, other formats? For instance, from the tables created in Excel with the data excerpts from interviews and observation notes that we saw in the previous session, one can start writing a narrative with a section for each theme identified and using some representative verbatim quotations from participants. This narrative needs to be combined with a critical interpretation of the findings and their connection with theories in the field or with theories of change for related projects. In short, we need to make clear the contributions that our findings make to existing knowledge and/or practices. Here we can see some of the possible written outputs for disseminating qualitative findings. The list includes scientific journal articles, case studies, narrative reports, thematic analysis reports, ethnographic accounts, conference papers, policy briefs, and dissertations or theses. We will look into the details of those that may be more relevant for us. Journal articles are published in scientific journals and are reviewed by experts in the field. It is usually a standard academic output of research. Its aim is to provide a novel contribution to the existing scholarship and debates in the field in order to advance theory and/or practice. The audience for journal articles includes academics, researchers, and practitioners in the field. Different journals have specific requirements, but generally the core elements that constitute a journal article are the abstract, where we provide a summary of the study's objectives, methods, and findings. The introduction, where we provide the background to the research questions, and a critical review of the literature. The methods, where we give a detailed explanation of the qualitative methods used, including data collection tools like interviews and observations and a data analysis approach. The results and discussion, where we present the findings from, for instance, thematic analysis, with direct quotations from the participants and the critical implications of the findings for the field of our study. Finally, in the conclusion section, we provide a summary of the study presented in the paper, its limitations, and suggestions for future research. Case studies are in-depth studies of a particular case. A case can be constituted by an individual, a group, an organization, or event. The aim of case studies is to provide accurate insights into the complexity of a phenomena in a real-world context. The audience of case studies are usually, but not only, practitioners, policymakers, and educators. To prepare a write-up for a case study, the core elements to include are the background, which provides details of the context of the case and its significance, the description of the case, including the participants, the settings, and other details, the findings with the key themes and insights identified, supported by evidence from the findings, and the conclusion, where we summarize the lessons learned and outline the implications of the case. Narrative reports present the findings using a storyline and tend to focus on participants' experiences. The purpose of this format is to make the results of the research easily accessible and understandable, as well as engaging to read for a wider audience that includes the general public, community stakeholders, social workers, and professionals. The core elements of a narrative report are the introduction, where we present the research focus and an overview of the narrative style, the participant stories, where we use direct quotations from the participants and descriptions that help us build a story, the analysis section, where we present the critical insights that we derive from the narratives, and the conclusions, where we sum up the broad findings and their possible applications. Thematic analysis reports are structured reports that focus on the themes and patterns identified in the data. Their aim is to systematically present qualitative results, and it is a format particularly useful to inform projects that include multiple themes. The audience that can be interested in this type of reports includes academics and professional researchers, as well as organizations. A thematic analysis report comprises an introduction, where we provide an overview of the research questions and thematic analysis, theme-based sections, where we expand on the description of each theme, supported with quotes and critical analysis. In the discussion section, we integrate the themes identified with overall insights, and the conclusion, where we outline the implications of the findings and the potential actions that may follow from them. We have looked at a few common or important formats, but as you can see in this table, there are more we don't have time to cover here. We will share these slides after the session and on our resources site if you would like to review the details of other formats. This table summarizes the characteristics of different formats to present qualitative findings. It does so by looking at the description, purpose, preparation, and audience elements for each type. Here, we briefly consider an example of a qualitative study presented in a journal article. In this qualitative study conducted in Tanzania, the exploration of social, cultural, and psychological dimensions in participants helped identify issues that impact soil erosion. The results, as the abstract shows, highlighted a set of factors and recommended ways to address them. In particular, the text highlighted in pink refers to the problem or gap addressed by the study. That is to say, looking at the impact of social, cultural, and psychological dimensions on soil erosion. The blue one refers to the research focus and approach, namely the qualitative exploration of stakeholders' experiences of soil erosion. The green one highlights the theoretical framework used, that is to say, community resilience framework and social dilemma approach. We will not get into the details of this now. The yellow refers to the findings, namely cattle keeping practice as part of the cultural identity, lack of social cohesion and of alternative livelihood opportunities, and weak governance. And the orange one, the recommendations of the study, that is to say, addressing cultural norms, building cohesive communities, and strengthening governance. What is important about this example is the fact that, on the one hand, it shows unique contributions that qualitative studies can make by bringing to light aspects that would not otherwise become known using traditional research approaches to study soil erosion. In particular, a natural science approach is unlikely to bring up issues of practices that are part of cultural identity, social cohesion, lack of opportunities, or poor governance. On the other hand, through the recommendations suggested to address the issue, that is to say, addressing cultural norms, building cohesive communities, and strengthening local governance, the paper shows the practical applications of the study. From the example we just looked at, qualitative research gathers in-depth insights into local agricultural practices, community values, knowledge systems, and socio-ecological dynamics. Therefore, its unique contributions can be that it captures farmers' knowledge and experiences, emphasizes context-specific adaptable solutions, encourages participatory approaches in agroecology. After having looked at the different types of written outputs that we can create to present qualitative findings, we may wonder, how does qualitative research inform agroecology practices, project development, policy, and applications for CRFS projects? It can be informing existing projects, guiding new project development, shaping policy for sustainable food systems. We are about to look into each of these in more detail. Have you used qualitative findings to inform existing projects, design new ones, or make policy recommendations? How can qualitative findings refine ongoing agroecological practices? Through local knowledge integration, interviews and field observations uncover unique local practices such as traditional pest control. Farmer-centered solutions. Qualitative feedback helps adapt solutions to farmers' actual needs. Continuous improvement. It can help CRFS projects adapt based on farmers' feedback on soil management or crop rotation. Qualitative results can help design new projects by highlighting community needs. Focus groups with communities identify priorities like water conservation or crop diversification. Moreover, qualitative results can help project design become more inclusive. Participatory research methods like interviews ensure marginalized voices, for instance, women farmers, are considered. For example, focus group results reveal gender-based labor roles, and new projects can design activities that support equitable workloads. Can you think of any examples where community insights gathered during the design phase of a CRFS project led to a more locally relevant intervention? Qualitative findings can contribute to policy changes supportive of agroecology through capturing local contexts. Narratives and case studies inform policymakers about local agricultural conditions and cultural practices. Policy recommendations. Qualitative data supports tailored policies like subsidies for organic farming in specific regions. Some examples that can be relevant to CRFS projects could be how qualitative data on land rights or market access policies can influence policy changes or advocacy efforts. Here, we'll look at how qualitative results drive specific applications within agroecological practices. In particular, these can be related to field-level innovations. Using farmer testimonies, practices like intercropping or composting can be adjusted to local conditions. Social capital and collaboration. Qualitative research emphasizes the importance of farmer networks, enhancing knowledge-sharing practices. Policy dialogue and knowledge exchange. Qualitative findings can be used in regional workshops where stakeholders discuss policy needs based on local community feedback. Strengthening FRNs. Research highlights networks' needs, leading to better support and resources for farmer groups. Ecosystem resilience strategies. Examples of farmer-led adaptive practices collected through qualitative research can inform strategies for ecosystem resilience and agroecological scaling. Do we have examples from CRFS projects on these aspects? Here, in this picture, we show how in the FRN Stories study that we conducted in Kenya, Malawi, and Uganda, we followed a process where, after coding our type notes, we collated extracts to relevant themes, and then we wrote summaries, which we later structured into a structure showing the relationships among different themes, and finally, we prepared a PowerPoint presentation to present our results at a convening in Kenya. Hopefully, the information shared with the audience helped raise awareness of FRNs in Kenya, Malawi, and Uganda, and it can inform future action. Following this, we are now in the process of writing a journal article to share our findings with scholars in the field with the aim of contributing to related scholarship. These are some useful resources about ways to present research results and to go deeper into some of the concepts we touched on today. In case you're interested, the slides for this presentation as well as lots more resources can be downloaded from our website at statsforsd.org/resources. Thank you very much.